Now, regardless of how you may feel about the sequel trilogy, it's hard to deny that, when scrutinized or comparing and contrasting the two parts we've gotten thus far, some things in it either just don't make a ton of sense or don't align themselves well with previously established lore. One such example of this, and probably the most glaring, is Rey and her incredible ability to wield the Force so proficiently with virtually no training, other than the training she apparently stole from Kylo Ren's mind, which is mentioned in the novelization of The Last Jedi, that while Kylo Ren was trying to probe her mind, she turned the tables on him and his training essentially became her training. And to be clear here right at the start, I actually take no issue with Rey being extremely strong with the Force. She's our new main character and it makes sense that she would be strong with it for some reason. Instead, I take issue with the flimsy explanation for that power, that she's come about simply as a type of light side counterbalance to Kylo Ren on the dark, while the extremely powerful Snoke, we can pretty safely assume has been around for quite some time and is far more powerful than Kylo Ren, hasn't, as far as we know, ever brought about the same type of counterbalance at any point. Then of course there's the previously mentioned training thing, where Rey's just basically downloaded it from Kylo's mind, Matrix style, which no, doesn't necessarily sound like it's something entirely beyond the realm of possibility in Star Wars, considering Kylo himself can pull information from people's minds. But again, Kylo has previous training, and he seems to have limits to how much or how easily he can get information from the minds of others. So Rey fluking into getting all or most of Kylo's training in a matter of seconds not only seems like a bit of a stretch to put it mildly, but also undermines the idea that the dark side is the quick and easy path, which Yoda speaks about in The Empire Strikes Back. Because I don't think there's a quicker or easier way to amass power than by just downloading all your training in a matter of seconds and never learning the responsibility that goes along with it, nor how to manage the ever-present temptation of the dark side that comes with having so much power. So what if there's another possibility or explanation here, one that might sound incredibly ridiculous at first, but that there's actually a lot of evidence to support, and may have even been J.J. Abrams' original plan, and will again be his plan now that he's directing Episode 9, and can conceivably finish the story however he wants. And that is, what if Rey is the manifestation of the light side Ben Solo rejected when he became Kylo Ren? What if she's not so much a counterbalance, but that they are two halves of the same being in a sense? And yeah, again, I know how out there that may sound, but let's take a look at all the evidence that exists in The Force Awakens, and especially in the novelization, that suggests Kylo Ren suspected something was special about Rey from the start, or that there was a link between them long before Snoke would have had any cause or knowledge to create such a bond as he claims to have done in The Last Jedi. First, we have how angry Kylo Ren gets when he hears that a girl has helped BB-8 and Finn escape them on Jakku, and he doesn't seem to get upset because they've been helped by somebody, but that he's upset because it was a girl, almost as if he feared something like this would happen, or through dreams or visions has been seeing a girl maybe even his whole life, and when he hears his officer maybe speak of this girl, he immediately becomes afraid that this could be the one. In the novelization, there are several very curious passages that further imply Kylo suspects something special about Rey long before he'd ever seemingly have a reason to, including two from when Kylo first catches her in the forest. One of which comes right after he's force froze her in place, and he's encircling her and he says in a mystified voice, something, there is something, who are you? Later in that same scene in the book, he says to her, is it true, you're nothing special after all, you're just a Jakku scavenger. Now, both of these lines seem to imply he suspects her of being someone important, or someone that he knows of somehow. And again, I can only guess that he's had visions of a girl, that he's literally only ever seen as a girl, or a child, which means he can't be sure if Rey and this girl are one and the same. Then, when he's interrogating her on Starkiller Base, in both the book and movie, Kylo again seems surprised that she's just a scavenger, as if he really thinks that she's the girl from his visions, but he can't figure out why the Force would show him an ordinary nobody scavenger from a backwater planet like Jakku. Then, when she resists his mind probe, Kylo runs off and tells Snoke just how powerful he believes her to be with the Force, and then he later tells a stormtrooper after she's escaped that she's only beginning to test her powers. The longer it takes to find her, the more dangerous she becomes. I mean, why in the world does Kylo jump to this conclusion that she's going to get more and more powerful by the moment? Because that's not how the Force works. You don't exponentially start to grow in power like he seems to be implying is going to happen here with her. Again, unless Kylo knows or suspects something special about her, and these suspicions seem to get confirmed in the novelization when Kylo mutters to himself, "It is you," after Rey pulls Anakin's old lightsaber to her over him right before their duel in the snow. In other words, this is the moment Kylo comes to terms with the fact that this girl is the one he somehow knows about. Again, most likely through dreams or visions. And yes, after what we learned in The Last Jedi, we can now make the assumption that maybe Kylo Ren is coming to terms with the fact that Rey is his counterbalance in the Force, one that Snoke warned him about. However, I'm not sure that explains why Kylo immediately begins to suspect her, long before he's ever met her in fact, and when all he knows about her is that she's helped Finn and BB-8 get away. Instead, I think Rian Johnson came up with a different idea for the story than what J.J. Abrams originally was going with, because in J.J.'s part of the story, there seems to be a lot of evidence to support the fact that a bond was already in place between Rey and Kylo Ren before they ever even met, or before Snoke would have ever known to create one. And even though Snoke claims to be the one to have done this, it's hard to work out exactly when or how he managed to do this. I mean, are we to assume that Snoke went into Kylo's mind, found Rey there, and then was able to somehow reach out through the Force and find Rey's mind to make this connection? And if Snoke could do something like that, why hadn't he done this before to find Luke or maybe Leia and the Resistance, since they'd both obviously be in Kylo's mind as well? And then again, it might be difficult to find Luke, who had disconnected himself from the Force. In fact, maybe the real reason Luke did disconnect himself from the Force was to hide from Snoke, and while disconnected is when his disillusionment with the Jedi really began to flourish with him. Anyway, this all leads us back to the questions. Will J.J. Abrams now try to steer the story back to what he may have originally intended? And how could that still be done? And as I've been arguing, I think the original idea was that there has been, for some time, a Force bond between Rey and Kylo Ren that has nothing to do with Snoke creating it. And that, in a sense, Rey and Kylo Ren could be one and the same. But how might that be possible? Well, what if it's always been Ben Solo's plan to destroy Snoke, to destroy the one who has been haunting him his whole life? And some of the other sources of canon very much back up the fact that a darkness, most likely Snoke, has been looming over Ben Solo since even before he was born. And his initial motive for wanting to destroy Snoke could have been as simple as just wanting to be free of him, or maybe even to rid the galaxy of him. But for whatever reason, Ben believed the only way to ever be able to destroy Snoke was by embracing the dark side and becoming his apprentice, thus allowing himself to get close to Snoke, and to one day, in a sense, stab him in the back, which is kind of what ended up happening. However, to become Snoke's apprentice, to become Kylo Ren, Ben Solo had to be destroyed. Whatever goodness that he had once had within him had to be utterly obliterated, or Snoke would have never accepted him as an apprentice, much less ever let him get close. And this would be similar to how Obi-Wan told Luke that Darth Vader destroyed Anakin Skywalker, or the good man that he'd once been. But the goodness or light that had once been a part of Ben Solo wasn't actually destroyed. Instead, that goodness would become Rey. And the reason why Rey is so powerful, why she seems to be a counterbalance to Kylo Ren, why she could download his training right from his mind, why they have a bond that immediately is sensed by Kylo Ren before he has any reason to suspect a thing, is because she is him, or at least she's his light side half that he completely rejected. And before you say that sounds impossible, or that there's no way JJ ever intended anything like that, keep in mind that Rey was born on Jakku, a planet with an extremely strong light side nexus at its core, according to the Aftermath book series. Also keep in mind that Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, is 10 years older than Rey. So if around the age of 9 is when Ben rejected the light within him and seemingly destroyed that half, this could be when, via Immaculate Conception, as was the case with Shmi Skywalker giving birth to Anakin, Rey's mother became pregnant with her. And the reason why she sold her for drinking money eventually is because she obviously knew something was different about her child and couldn't accept it. Then, in The Last Jedi, during the mirror scene, the reason Rey sees herself reflected there is because she has no parents, not really. A few more interesting facts here is that in the novelization, when Rey's Force vision starts after touching Anakin's old lightsaber, she sees a little boy in the corridor on Bespin. And as crazy as it sounds, perhaps what she's seeing is the moment she, or the good part, split away from Ben Solo. She's seeing the moment of her creation and the creation of Kylo Ren. And from that moment on, Kylo would forever be given visions or dreams of this other half of his, this girl that he'd created, as a reminder of the light that had once been a part of him. This then begins to explain why Kylo Ren feels the pull to the light again after going to Jakku, where Rey, his light side half, literally is. Not to mention, Kylo coming to Jakku could have been what causes the awakening in Rey, an awakening that Snoke senses and asks Kylo Ren about. And maybe Snoke even suspects what the awakening truly is, which is when he warns Kylo about the possibility of a counterbalance coming about to be his equal, even though Snoke knows it's the light side Kylo rejected manifesting or waking up, and that it'll need to be dealt with by his apprentice. This then means that Snoke didn't form the bond between them, or if he did, it was a relatively simple task, considering a link already in a way existed between them. The reason Snoke then wants Kylo Ren to be the one to kill Rey is because it will be him literally murdering his light side half. It'll be him killing any chance of ever turning back from the darkness. Furthermore, the reason why Luke was so disturbed when he peered into Ben's mind, as seen in The Last Jedi, is because there wasn't a shred of light there. Even when he looked into Vader's mind, he saw at least a spark somewhere down deep that there was good still left in him. But he didn't see that in Ben. Instead, there was nothing, and it frightened him so much that his reaction was to kill him on the spot. Though, mind you, even if I'm somehow on the right track here, I still won't be a fan of that scene, but at least it might have a better explanation. A few other things this theory could explain is why Anakin's lightsaber went to Rey over Kylo Ren. It was picking the light side half over the dark, which makes sense when we look at the new lore established about kyber crystals, or the crystals that power lightsabers, and how they choose their owners, and that darksiders must corrupt crystals and bend them to their will, which makes the crystal bleed and turns the saber color red. This theory could also explain why Han and Rey take to each other so quickly in The Force Awakens, because in a strange way, they are father and daughter, though they obviously don't realize this on any sort of conscious level. This then explains why Leia walks right past Chewie to hug Rey after Han has died, because there is a connection of sorts between them, though yes, J.J. Abrams has admitted Leia ignoring Chewie there was a big mistake. Finally, what might have thrown a wrench into Ben's original plan to just stop Snoke was learning he was the grandson of Darth Vader, and some way, somehow, attaining the melted helmet of Darth Vader, which I think The Force Awakens makes clear, has shown him the power of the dark side, and it convinced Kylo to want to take over the whole damn galaxy, or to let nothing stand in his way from finishing what Vader had once started. In closing here, as I like to do with all my theory videos, this is where I say I could either be close to the mark or way, way off. Either way, I think it's clear when we examine The Force Awakens that J.J. Abrams had more in mind for the bond between Rey and Kylo Ren than it was just something created by Snoke on a whim. And though at face value, the idea that Rey could literally be the light side half of Kylo Ren sounds a bit crazy, I will admit that, there is quite a bit of evidence to support that it may have been JJ's original idea, and that Rian Johnson may have kept it to some extent, but changed it a bit by just making Rey a counterbalance in the Force to Kylo Ren, though he seemed to somehow overlook that if such a thing as counterbalances occur, Snoke should need one more than Kylo Ren. Of course, the true test of any theory is how quickly and easily it can be explained in the movie and understood by anyone and everyone watching it, and in this case, I'd say it gets the thumbs up in this department, since The Last Jedi has already laid the groundwork that these two are opposites of each other, not to mention all the little clues in The Force Awakens that are already in place to back this theory up. The Last Jedi also seems to confirm there wasn't a trace of good left in Kylo Ren, at least not one that Luke could find, which further backs up the idea that, in a way, Kylo has banished the light side within him completely, but that maybe it wasn't destroyed. And an interesting plot for Episode 9 could be these two, Rey and Kylo Ren, really starting to influence each other, or in other words, Rey being tempted by the dark side and Kylo being further tempted back to the light, despite still having the desire to be like his grandfather and rule the galaxy, and that in the end, they somehow need to save each other, or that maybe only one of them can survive. Either way, as I've been saying all along about this sequel trilogy, it's all about creating an interesting dynamic between these two main characters, and in my opinion at least, this might just offer that. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Is this theory crazy, or am I possibly onto something? So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.